So we already have a quorum, and we may now start our meeting. Since the last meeting, that we have received one paper, and this is already on the agenda. This is paper CB bracket 4 398/1718 bracket 1. Next, items for discussion for the next meeting. Yes. For our meeting today, are we expecting one more paper? Because at an earlier meeting we discussed children. I think last time we discussed the topic of whole day schooling. Yeah, I think on one occasion we discussed children's rights. Never mind. All right. Do you have any recommendations for items to be discussed at the next meeting? Our next meeting is scheduled for the 2nd of February at 10:45. The government proposes that we discuss two items. The first one is provision of boarding section of the Hong Chi Pine Hill School, and also the re-provisioning of the boarding section of Hong Chi Pine Hill School number 2 in Tai Po. The other item is how to prevent and manage sexual harassment in school campuses. Tanya Chan, other than sexual harassment, could we ask the government also, brief us on the subject of sex education? Recently, we have seen many, instances of women being molested, and many people are concerned as to how we can protect our children and teach them about their physical development and so on. And the school may need to do it, the parents may also need to do it at home, but at least we need to know what the school will have to do and what the parents will need to do. So if the government could give us some indication, and I think that would be much better than just relying on the community to do that. Okay, the clerk will inform the Bureau about your request. Right. The Education Bureau has also proposed that in respect of sex and moral education, they will be giving us a paper. There's one more item, Madam Chair. Last time the Education Bureau explained to us that they were not able to attend, and officials to attend the meeting on rights of children. The education panel at the last meeting, members asked the Deputy Secretary, Madam Choi, that is the reason why the Bureau was absent from that meeting. The Deputy Secretary, the Undersecretary, did not give a positive response, and she promised to give a written answer. But so far we've not received her response. So I'd like to ask, last time, Madam Choi at the last Education Panel meeting had promised members that there will be a written response. Well, we have yet to receive that reply, so we'll follow up on that. Do members have other items I'd like to propose for our next meeting? If not, meanwhile, we still welcome any proposals from members. But anyway, the next meeting is scheduled for the 2nd of February. We will now move on to the third item, implementation of whole day schooling, homework policy, and school-based after-school learning and support programs. We'll now first invite the officials to join us. I think members should note that we have already discussed this item at our December meeting, and members were very interested in the topic, and we did not have enough time for a thorough discussion. And today we will continue with that discussion. At the last meeting we received 5 motions proposed by members in respect of this item. After we've finished with our discussion on this item, we will be voting on those motions. Last time, some members already spoken on this topic. let me now ask this. For members who have not spoken at the last meeting, are there anyone who would like to speak? Please put up your hands. For the first round, we have Mr. Chanamban, Claudia Mo. I think you spoke already at last time. So second round for Claudia Mo. Mr. Yip Kin Yun, Mr. Hui Chi Fong, it's first round for you, or second round. Are there anyone else? Mr. Yu Chong, it's your first round, right? Okay, you may now put down your hands. Mr. Yu Chong. Right. We will invite members who have not yet spoken to proceed first. Mr. Chanamban, whole day school obviously would provide more ample time for lessons, and we don't need to have a tight schedule. But at the same time, when children leave school, they have very little time left to spend with the family. They don't even have time to go to the park and play. Just imagine a child, after he or she finishes school in the afternoon, it will be 4 to 5 before they go home, and if they take a short break, and after dinner at 7 or 8, they will need to do the homework. Unfortunately, many children nowadays cannot finish homework in an hour. And even after school, if they attend certain, activities within and outside the school, they basically don't have enough time. So we hope that with whole day schooling, the homework could actually be done during the lessons. Actually, the need for children to do homework affect the relationship between children and the parents, because after a whole day of schooling, the children will not be able to, be able to pay so much attention to the homework, and the parents will need to keep them company, and sometimes there will be quarrels between them.
Therefore, I believe that for whole day school, if the homework can be completed in school, that would be much better, because it would allow more time for parent-child bonding at home after school hours. If you have to do homework and for a long time after school, it is very tiring and exhausting. I want to see whether the EDB can think of ways to set up homework sessions in which teachers and maybe higher grade students can help the younger children complete their homework, so that children will be able to enjoy their after-school hours free of homework. Well, we have two representatives from the Education Bureau, Undersecretary Dr. Choi Yok-lin and Deputy Secretary Mrs. Hong Chen-Choi-Wa. Would the Undersecretary please take this question? Thank you, Madam Chair. Whole day school is to provide more time for students in their whole person development. Ever since we started to launch the whole day program, there has been quite a long period of time, and we have always been in communication with the schools and teachers, and we do have guidelines for students to engage in a healthy and balanced lifestyle. Chairman, well, time is up. Well, my question is whether there are any policies and measures to encourage schools to take this forward. You cannot just tell them to go for whole person development. That's not enough. Well, yes, other than whole person development, there would also be resources put in after school activities and field trips, etc. We've always been emphasizing more communication between teachers and students in terms of homework. Undersecretary, many of our members are suggesting that homework be completed in school. the school hours are already long. We don't want the children to have to go home to continue tutoring and with their studies. As of today, we still have 4 members in the first round. Leung Yu-chung, Cheng Chong-tai, Ho Kai-ming, Chen Kwok-kun, you've already spoken in the first round. Second round, we have Claudia Mo, Michael Tian Hui, Chi Fong, Yip King Yun. All right, so we will go with this order. Because we have already discussed this item for a very long time in the previous meeting, we will not be able to have too much time today. Mr. Leung Yu-chung. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I agree with your viewpoint, Madam Chair, that many members have been asking about the possibility of completing homework before returning home. Well, I have once been a teacher, and I really do believe that then this is a good suggestion. I'm not sure whether the government has drawn reference from other countries, such as the UK and Australia. Students complete homework before going home. That is a fact. And I'm not only talking about primary schools and secondary schools. When I was studying A-levels in the UK, I finished my homework before returning home. What I did at home was only to study some more because I felt that I didn't do it well enough. Recently, I visited UK secondary school students. They still complete their homework in school. What they are doing outside of school is extra that doesn't need to be submitted. There is no mention in the paper whether you have looked at the methods from other countries. So I want to ask the Undersecretary whether you have drawn reference from other countries. If yes, why haven't you try to adopt some of their methods and approaches? Undersecretary, in formulating curriculum, we of course would draw reference from different countries and on experts' opinion, and also to consider the local needs. Many of you have asked whether students can finish their homework before returning home for whole day students. I think we could communicate this with the schools to encourage them to have a longer and better rest after school. Well, I think you should take a clearer stance. You cannot say that you're going to encourage. You need to take a stance on whether you support this or not. Can primary and secondary school students complete their homework before returning home? Is that possible? Well, so this is a very simple question. Can all the homework be completed in school and that no homework be taken home? Well, some schools would do that at certain times. I'm asking about your stance from the point of the Education Bureau. Well, we emphasize more on quality than on quantity. Well, you still haven't really given me a direct answer. So do you agree that homework should be completed in school? Well, homework is an aid to help the students learn better. So we would not stop learning after school. Well, we're not stopping learning after school. I think she is not being clear in her answer. Well, students can take the initiative to do a bit more or do extra if they want to. But I'm just asking whether you have a clear stance in agreeing that that homework should only be completed in school. Well, thank you. I'm sure other members would follow up on the same question. Next, we have Mr. Cheng Song-tai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it is very appropriate to talk about homework volume. During Christmas holidays, many parents are actually working very hard because some students take exams after the holidays and they also need to complete a huge volume of homework, and Christmas holidays is actually a very painful time for them. I want to point out that in the paper CB bracket for 2871718 bracket 03 in paragraph 12, there is a mention that in 2015 and 15 a survey was done on homework volume and 7,000 parents were interviewed. And the results show that homework load is not the only, if not major, factor in determining the time spent by students on homework. So, based on this paper, it seems that the Bureau do not really understand the pressure faced by parents and students on homework. They only blame it on students' individual performances and on school policies. Well, Madam Chair, I think you were clear about this as well. We have always been emphasizing the homework volume, but then this is not the only factor in determining performance. But then the Bureau has been misleading people in saying that we are criticizing homework only, that homework volume is the only factor in affecting students' learning. I hope our panel can, based on this survey, because the survey already interviewed about 7,000 parents, we want to have a better understanding of the questionnaire questions and the contents, so that parents will have a better understanding on how the Bureau conducted the surveys. We are going back to the basics here. We just have two requests. First of all, would the EDB really comprehensively review the homework guidelines, which has been hugely criticized recently? Secondly, to ensure that schools will follow guidelines, that there should be at least 100 minutes of rest. I think this is the most basic request we are looking at. The parents only request that these two policies be implemented in schools. Thank you. Undersecretary, thank you, a member, for your question on homework volume. As I have said earlier, since 2000, we have always been encouraging a healthy and balanced lifestyle, and we have set out guidelines. So we have taken some measures, and in our guidelines, we have always emphasized that homework should be fully planned out, and it should be have a multi-pronged design. Quality should be emphasized more than quantity, and we want the consideration to be student-based. We know that we use homework as an indicator, then parents would be misled in thinking that we only focus on quantity. Mr. Cheng Chong-tai has requested for a copy of the questionnaire survey because it was mentioned in the paper that in 2015 and 16 about 7,000 parents were interviewed. It seems that we don't have specific information and figures from the surveys. Could you share with us a copy of that and send it to the electoral secretariat later on? Yes. Next. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are very concerned with students' learning. We hope that they could learn in a happy manner. Or we're not saying that there should be no homework. What we are talking about is that there is too much pressure from homework and students are deterred from going to school because of all that pressure, leading to suicides. Of course, I agree that quality is more important than quantity, but has the EDB tried to understand the homework situation in primary and secondary schools? For example, primary 1, primary 3, and primary 6 students, how much time is spent on homework each day, on homework done in school and done after school? Did you actually find out such information in your questionnaire survey in 2015 and 16? Did that include in the survey the average homework time for the students? Oh, I don't have the information right now. I could submit the information to you later. That is very important. The EDB has the responsibility to monitor the situation. If you don't have such information, we are concerned that some schools have been giving out too much homework to the students, leading to pressure, depression, because they just spend hours and hours on homework each day. You must have such information before we can continue our discussion. Well, do you have a homework guidelines? If you look at the paper it seems that in 2014 the guidelines on homework have been taken out. But without guidelines, how can you really monitor the amount of time spent on homework each day? What kind of mechanism can you ensure that schools would not give too much homework? The decision made in 2014 was made after discussion with stakeholders, because quantitative homework has no meaning, and we have a guideline on tests and exams and homework on what is considered meaningful homework, which can really help enhance students' learning. So how do we monitor the schools on a daily basis? We want the schools to communicate with the parents, and the homework policy should be put online so that parents could have a better understanding.
Also, during our school inspection, we would also look at the design of the homeworks. So the Undersecretary has avoided the issue of the amount of homework. We're worried that students might be overloaded with too much homework. So do you have any guidelines saying that for primary school students it would be too much if they have to spend more than 2 hours on homeworks? Or for primary 6, if they spend more than 3 hours, it's too much. Do you have any such guidelines? Or do you think that you don't need to be bothered and that the schools can assign as much homework as they like? Well, normally at the beginning of the term, the schools will explain to the parents about how much time the children should need to spend on their homework, depending on the circumstances of the school. Parents are also reminded that if the children take a long time and still cannot finish with the homework, well, Undersecretary, I think what members would like to know, like Dr. Cheng Chung Tai said, he would like to ask what is the situation in other jurisdictions and whether there are any guidelines on homeworks. Could you conduct such a comparison for our reference? In 2015, 2016, you conducted this survey. After you've conducted the survey, you must have analyzed the findings. What were those conclusions? I believe the parents are also very concerned, especially many children. As we can see, after they finish school, they need to spend 3 hours on the homework. So when they go to finish school at 5, they go home at 6, and they don't even have time to take a short nap. And then they have to spend 3 hours on the homework all the way until 9 to 10 in the evening. So this is really very, very, inhuman. So I think there should be a review on the question of homeworks. Mr. Ho Kai Ming, followed by Priscilla Leung. I'm afraid I have to draw a line here. Abraham Sheck after Priscilla Leung. Other members are going for the second round, and I can only allow them 2 minutes each. For the first round, we have Priscilla Leung, Abraham Sheck, and Starry Lee. Is it your first round? Second round? Oh, you've already asked your question at the last meeting. Mr. Ho Kai Ming, thank you. Anyone who had, studied for the Certificate of Education course, I think we all know that homework is a tool to assess how much the students have learned. Same for exams. I understand that students need to study many subjects, and if they have 2 different homeworks for the different subjects, it will amount to a lot. So I think this all boils down to the arrangement for the curriculum, from teaching to assessment, and from the result of the feedback, you can then consider how you can review and improve the curriculum. The homework, so whether or not there could be new forms of assessment so that we do not just have to rely on homeworks and examination. That's one question to reflect upon. Another point is about teachers. Teachers really have a very heavy workload. Early on, there was a study. The findings showed that every week, teachers have to work for 64.5 hours. Given a 5-day working week, teachers have to work for 12 hours a day. That is already exceeding the standard working hours limit. And there's a lot of work which the teachers don't need to do, actually. And I don't know whether the education have considered whether the teachers need to do that. 3 hours on teaching, on meetings, and 7 hours on administrative work. All these are non-teaching duties. Is it possible that we can address this issue and assign other colleagues to take up such duties? Another point is, some frontline teachers told us that with such long hours, even during the lunch break, the teachers have to stay in the classroom and eat the lunch with the children, the students, and it's even worse than the security guards. With such long working hours, it's not conducive to quality teaching. So has the Bureau considered how these issues could be resolved? Or could you consider adopting a pilot for 2 primary schools so that you can review the working load of teachers and your curriculum so that there could be some improvements, and at the same time cutting down on the amount of homework? Under Secretary? We have always been concerned about the workload of our teachers and the difficulties that they face. So the new administration right at the beginning allocated $3.6 billion to enable so that we can increase the number of teachers, so that we can provide support for teachers in carrying out the non-teaching duties and providing support for the students, and that the workload of the teachers could be relieved. Priscilla Leung. On the subject of homework, well, I've been a parent myself. My children have attended primary, secondary school here. Very often parents have to really wake up in the middle of the night, worried that the children have not really done the homework. But as to whether or not, like Mr. Liu Yu-chung said, namely the children can do all the homework at home, at school, so that they don't need to do it at home. The question is whether or not you're going to, ask the school to do all the work. I don't think it's possible. You need all 3 parties working together. The parents, the teachers, are partners. So some certain work will need to be done at home. I think we have to ask this question: what exactly is homework? When we hear the word homework, we're scared, and that's why you say students shouldn't need to do the homework at home. My experience is that my children also attended international schools, and we're talking about two separate systems. Sometimes it's too relaxed, for children studying in international school, and they have nothing to do at home, and they will, should they just play games? I don't think it should be that children should absolutely not do any homework when they go home. I think we need to be reasonable. We can suggest say that there shouldn't be so much homework, because sometimes too much homework is useless. Right now, children have to recite their lessons for subjects like arts, and I think that is totally unnecessary. All you need to do is do some sketches at school for them to express themselves, and I don't think they need to copy the painting or picture 100 times when they go home. So I hope the Undersecretary can work with us and explore or ask what sort of work we should assign. Certain work, for some certain works, students can only do them under the guidance of the teachers. So then children do more of such work at school. But for homework which should involve the parents and which is fun, I think we need to train our teachers, and the Bureau should provide more such teaching materials so that the teachers can be involved. And if they have the ability to participate, sometimes the work is so difficult that even the parents don't know how to do it. So I don't think there should be, rigid guidelines. We can say we can cut down on the amount of homework and homework which are mechanical in nature. I think that should be the solution. I believe Ms. Leung's. I think the Undersecretary has heard the suggestion by Ms. Leung. Abraham Sheck. When we talk about homework, we have to first of all ask, what is the meaning of homework? The purpose of homework is to help the students revise what they have learned and to reflect on what they have learned in class so that they can refresh them, what they've learned at home. So I think we can't totally do away with homework. Even after they finish the lessons, they need to go back and review what they have learned. Even for electrical members, we have to do our homework as well. We have to read our papers. So there always been homework. So we have to really ask, what is the meaning of homework? The Education Bureau should explain clearly why we need homeworks. And we need to understand the meaning of homework. And then you should conduct a survey to find out, for every child between the age of 6 to 12, how many hours they would allocate to do the homeworks, and same for secondary school students. In the States, at the University of Michigan, they conducted a study to find out who are the students who would spend more time on the homework. Asian students, for example, spend 3.5 hours a day, whereas students from other jurisdictions would spend less time. So who is the better performer? So sometimes it's a question of cultural differences. Mr. Leung Yu Chung asked how you see the question of homework, and what do you think is the meaning of homework, and whether you should come up with some guidelines regarding homeworks. I don't think we should be talking about communication. What do you mean by communication? For many parents with children attending primary 1, 2, 3, and 4, we should allow the kids more time to learn about the meaning of homeworks. In many international schools, while they assign homeworks, but the students are not graded for the homeworks, but rather it is meant to for the students to refresh what they've learned in class, and practice at home. So I think the Bureau should, provide guidelines regarding the meaning of homework and indicate how much time students should take to do the homeworks. Thank you, Madam Chair and members, for pointing out this very crucial issue, which is what is homework and why do the children need to do homework. In the primary or basic education guideline, in one of the chapters, there is one section on effective homework, explaining the purpose of homework, how it should be done, and even the role of parents and how they should support the children doing the homework. But I fully agree that these are just, rigid rules. How can we implement them, flexibly? We need to work harder. We need to explore in greater detail as to how we can do better. Under Secretary or Deputy Secretary Chairman, Madam Chair. Yes, you have published many papers, you've conducted many studies, but apparently you've not been successful. Hong Kong students are really having a hard time, which means that the so-called guidelines and guidance that you've given, I think you need to work harder so that children can have a happy time, with the studies. Under Secretary, I'd like to thank the two members for raising the question of the meaning of homework. I think we need to look at homework in a positive manner. In the course of learning, homework can really help consolidate and understand what we have learned. It will also help students to show the outcome of their learning. In the course of doing homework, it is normal that they would encounter difficulties. It's also normal that they make mistakes. We shouldn't exaggerate the scores, the importance of the scores and the speed at which homeworks are done, but rather they can help us find out what are the difficulties encountered by the students in the course of the learning so that they could improve. So the whole discussion on homework, why are we emphasizing on the importance of communication and quality and not quantity? Because we don't want to give the wrong impression that homework is something that is always negative and it always means pressure. Because homeworks are important, because the whole purpose of learning is to prepare them to cope with their lives.
Mr. Riley, recently I have talked to middle class family. The parents said that in order for the students to have a happier childhood, they have decided to send their children to international school so that they will not become tiger parents to force the students in rote learning and studies and homework. I'm sure there are many similar stories around all of us. When I heard this, I asked myself, why under our system there is so much homework, there is so much pressure, and that parents need to force students in revision and rote learning. We ask for the EDB to issue a no homework guideline, but it is very difficult to cut it across the board. Different curriculum and different culture may bring along different volume in homework, and this is not something that teachers can make the decision. Sometimes parents take the initiative to make their students go for extra tutoring. So can we be more tolerant? We always want to try to learn from other cities. I don't know why we seldom talk about this. I want to ask whether you have, as Mr. Sheikh said, conducted some sort of studies and tried to draw reference from other countries. Many middle-class parents vote with their feet. I don't understand why. Can any studies be done? If there are some ways that could bring along changes. And maybe we could adopt a different approach. I mean, this is very crucial. We always say that we want to be open-minded, we want to be tolerant. I hope that we can really try to learn to do this at the EDB. Undersecretary, other than taking references from overseas, we also go for visits and attend conferences, and there's actually a mechanism to help the Hong Kong curriculum also be on track with other countries. Of course, there would be differences, and that might be traditional and cultural differences. And it takes a process to try to change these mindsets. The EDB has been working very hard, and frontline teachers and parents also understand that everyone wants a happy childhood for students. And yes, we could try to make changes to the homework, but it's not something that we can do overnight. But this paper didn't say that you have drawn reference from overseas. You only responded by saying that you have attended conferences and seminars, but I'm not confident with what you have said. How did you come up with this guideline? Well, we've always been doing this, but we didn't specify in the paper in which study we looked specifically at. As Ms. Lee, the Undersecretary, has said that they would conduct a study on homework in other countries. And in 2015 and 16, a questionnaire study was done, and the results would be shared to us. The study on homework will be conducted soon, and please share with us the results afterwards. Next, our second round, Ms. Claudia Mo, 2 minutes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a recent study 2 months ago that 1 out of 7 students suffer from depression. And one of the pressures come from homework. And of course, that is based both on quantity and quality. There's a lot of rote learning, and some teachers are way too anal about certain things, that if the English word is a bit out of the line, then they make them rewrite it. Children really need time to play, to be imaginative. We want children to be imaginative. An apple is not only an apple. You could think of a Newton story about apple falling off a tree, which led to his finding of gravity. And you can also think of the Bible story on Genesis. Well, it's really suffocating to talk about this. Well, why don't you have a drink of water? I'm sorry. You still have time. Well, just now another member said that it's a major decision to switch to international schools. But from 1997 till now, you have seen that this is the latest trend. Traditional schools only taught homework. A young parent told me once that it's only because of homework they wanted to emigrate, because it's too much pressure. Well, time is up. No, time is not up because I was drinking water just now. Well, for those who have money in Hong Kong, then you go to DSS, and then for those wealthier, then you go to international schools, and then the even wealthier go abroad. That is really unfair. Mr. Tian, oh, he's not present. Mr. Hui Chi-fung. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I have to be very strict on time. Well, Undersecretary, you've been reading from your notes all this time and answering our questions. Can you try to look at us in the eye when you answer? In your observation, how do you feel about students focusing on homework and losing out on parent-children bonding time? Do you think that this is very common? Recently, I went to a student award ceremony. I asked them how much time they spent on homework. Do you think it is a very common phenomena? Well, in general, I feel that children do face a homework issue, but not all the students told me that they think that homework is too much. So you don't think that it has become prevalent? No, that's not what I said. I just said that it is a continuing changing process. You can never achieve the ultimate goal because each children is different. So you think that this indicator is not important, right? No, we have been trying to emphasize that qualifying the indicators are not conducive in our understanding of homework. All right, I will leave some time to ask another question. Well, on the November 25th panel on children's rights, why didn't you attend the panel on the discussion of children's rights, and why haven't you given us a written reply on why you didn't attend the meeting? No, I'm asking why you didn't attend. Well, time is up. Mr. Chung Kwok-kwan. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I've always been emphasizing that homework is not only a child's problem. It's actually a problem of the entire family. Well, for those who are watching TV, maybe you would also understand what I mean. The mother spend a lot of time on homework with the children each day, and if you have 2 children, then you would need to go through the homework one by one, and then afterwards the pressure would go over to the father because the father would probably be sitting on the couch watching TV. I really understand this. This is exactly what happens in many families every single night. And there was a written reply from the Undersecretary on homework in November of last year. I'm not going to go into the details, but the summary is that yes, there are many factors leading to long homework hours. Well, I'm not going to argue about that. What I'm more concerned about is instead that yes, the EDB tells us that homework is important, that it is meaningful. You can still see that many schools give out too much homework, and that would lead to conflict in the family at home. Well, yes, you did mention a guideline on meaningful homework, but then how are you going to implement from the school? How can you improve? You tell us that you want to improve, but how are you going to do that? So how can you really improve yourselves in monitoring the schools, in distributing homework? Thank you. Well, time is up. Well, how our Ip Kin Yun, or maybe the Undersecretary can answer this in one go later on. In the paper, it is said that because students differ in learning and in performance, so it is unprofessional in setting a ceiling for the maximum volume of homework given out each night. Many members have asked how other countries do that. In the United States, in California, students will have a maximum volume of time given to homework each night based on their grade levels. That is similar in Taiwan. Also, are you saying that they are unprofessional because they have set a maximum time allowed for homework each night? Do we agree that after the primary schools have switched from half day to a whole day, the original purpose has already been changed? Do you really understand the current situation? Unfortunately, you cannot give us an answer today. Yes, a survey was done in 2015, but no information was given to us. How do you explain this phenomena? What are the reasons behind that? Is it on the part of the school, or is it, as Mr. Lee said, that as the EDB does not manage international schools, parents prefer to send their children there instead? We hope that the EDB would be professional in making changes. I don't think you are professional to say that other countries are being unprofessional. Mr. Chiu Ka-chun, when we talk about the maximum working hours, we talk about achieving work-life balance. Well, today, we also want children to achieve school-life balance. Our members have continued to ask about information from overseas. Mr. Ip has supplemented some information, and I also want to talk about Taiwan. There are many long holidays during the year. We hope that there will be one long holiday in which there will be no homework. This is not something that I have that I thought about it. Taipei City did that a couple of years back, forbidding schools to distribute homework during long holidays. Singapore also for long weekends, and Norway, of course, no homework. Finland also no homework. It is a no homework policy country. But how about Hong Kong? Even in Sham Shui Po District Council in May of 2017 also approved a motion that the HASAR government would promote a no homework day to try to relieve children's pressure. Even the district councils hope that we'll be able to achieve something.
Government still say that we're not being professional, and that if there are guidelines, it would stifle the development of the students because students are all different. So what is the role of the government? The district council is more concerned than ourselves, and there are many overseas examples. But you're not making reference to those experiences. You say, is it that you are the only professionals who are concerned about the development of children? Well, if need be, I would like to invite you to join us in a discussion on how to promote a no homework day together with the Christian Service Center. I hope the Undersecretary will consider accepting that invitation. Finally, we have Dr. Fernando Cheung. I'd like to remind members that Dr. Cheung, after Dr. Cheung has finished, we're going to vote on 5 of the motions proposed by members. Thank you. I don't know why the Education Bureau is so resistant to the idea of setting a cap on the amount of homework. Mr. Chiu Ka-chung talked about examples in other countries. I've been in the States for more than 10 years. They have a standard there. There is a 10-minute rule. So what does that mean? So for primary 1 students, they would be assigned homework which can be finished in 10 minutes. For P2, grade 2, 20 minutes. So by grade 12, then the student would need to spend 120 hours on homework. These standards have been set by experts, and the National Education Association and the National PTA endorsed those guidelines. Can we do the same in Hong Kong? The United States is such a big country, and even so, they have such a standard. Finland, that is obvious. The Finnish Consulate General, when he came to Hong Kong, he wanted to change the education system in Hong Kong, just one aspect of our system, namely homework. He said that when his daughter came to Hong Kong, and his daughter attended an international school here. His daughter studying in the international in Hong Kong, he felt that it's very, excessive. And our parents now, because the homework in local schools is so excessive, they need to send the kids to international schools. But even now, the Education Bureau is insistent that this is not an issue. We're talking about, children attending kindergartens having to do homework. This is really ludicrous. And the kindergarten children do not only need to, write the words, they need to also combine, single words into meaningful sentences. I just cannot. No, I don't know how much pressure we're putting on to our children. Thank you, Dr. Tan. I'm sure the Secretary has heard members' views. All of us are very concerned about the pressure, arising from excessive homework. So I've seen many young children are not really very happy with their studies. If we, we're putting so much homework on them. I hope you will really conduct a review, and also please give us the papers which members requested. Next, we're going to vote on the 5 motions. The first one is moved by Mr. Michael Teen. Could you please read out your motion? The motion's already been tabled. The first motion moved by Michael Teen. Thank you. The rationale for my motion is, I'd like to ask why some people don't need to do homework. That's because we don't know who should be responsible for learning diversity. The Secretary said that many parents should be responsible. But many parents told me that they don't know how to teach the children. If the schools cannot help, how can they provide the support? So my demand is simple. We should reform our education system, encouraging schools to set up policies and come up with measures to take care of the different learning needs of our students. Some of the schools' policy and homework cannot effectively cater to the learning diversities of students. Those with less abilities will need to do more homework. Many parents don't know how to take care of their children's learning needs. Early on, the Bureau had published guidelines saying that the parents should support the children. But many people ask you what is the meaning of support and communicate. You don't know how to do it. Therefore, the panel urges the government to, in respect of the schools and parents dealing with the learning, the different abilities of students learning, there should be specific guidelines. We're not talking about support or communication. The parents don't know what they mean. So Mr. Teen has already added, elaborated further on his motion. But anyway, we will now vote on the motion. Those in favor? Mr. Michael Teen's motion. Those in favor? Thank you. Any objection? Abstention? Right. So it's unanimous. I declare that the motion moved by Mr. Michael Teen is endorsed. The next motion is moved by Mr. Hui Chi-fong. Mr. Hui? This panel urges the government to address the issue of the excessive pressure children are put under because of the excessive homework, and the Bureau should come up with a more reasonable guideline in respect of homework, and to ensure that the school will follow the guidelines regarding the hours of rest or break for students. Those in favor? Thank you. Those against? Abstention. So I declare that Mr. Hui's motion is now carried. Next, motion jointly moved by Cheung Kok Kwan and Oh Chong Shing. Mr. Oh Chong Shing, could you read out your motion? Thank you. In view of the fact that there have been many instances of children committing suicide because of the pressure of homework, many parents have indicated that there's too much homework for children and they need to spend a lot of time after school before they can finish homework so that they don't have enough time for play. Furthermore, some children don't even have enough time for rest or sleep. This panel therefore urges the government to expedite the review of the current education system and also the volume of homework for children attending secondary and primary schools. And for P1 and P3 students, the government should implement a pilot study on zero homework and ask schools participating in this scheme to require the students finish all the homework in school so that they don't need to go home and continue to do the homework, thus relieving the pressure. Those in favor? Thank you. Those against? Abstention? I declare that Mr. Orr's motion is carried. Next, Mr. Siu Ka-chun. Please read out your motion. Thank you. This panel urges the Education Bureau to review and set the guideline on homework and consider setting a cap on the amount of time to be spent on homework. And on Friday, the homework assigned to students should be the same as those for weekdays. And the school should at least set aside a long holiday during which no homework will be assigned so the students can really enjoy a real holiday. Those in favor? Thank you. Those against? Abstention. We have 6 members in favor, 5 abstention, and no objection. Again, I declare that Mr. Siu's motion is carried. Finally, we now come to Dr. Fernando Cheung's motion. Dr. Cheung? Some international studies indicated that of the 40-odd countries in the world, Hong Kong, the amount of homework for Hong Kong students is the second highest. And recently, many students and children have indicated that there's too much pressure from homework, and there should be a limit. The panel therefore urges the Bureau to set the maximum volume of homework to be assigned for primary students and actively monitor the implementation of these guidelines so that we can really provide an environment for children to develop healthily. Those in favor? Thank you. Those against? Abstention. Right. We have 9 in favor and no objection and 4 abstentions. So again, I declare Dr. Cheung's motion is carried. Next, we will move on to item 4 on the agenda. For this item, we will be discussing the redevelopment of Island School at 20 Board Road Mid-Levels. I hope members who would like to speak on this item, because I need to manage time. We have yet one more item before we finish. I'm sure members are more interested in the other item regarding kindergartens. Okay, regarding the redevelopment of Island School at Board Road, how many members would like to speak? Okay, the clerk will make a record. We have Tanya John, Abraham Shek, Helena Wong, Chen Chi Chun, Yip Kin Yun. Have I left out anyone? So again, 3 minutes each. and I think I'm going to draw a line there, and I won't allow a second round. Madam Chair, I've read the document and Annex I. I've also looked at the so-called standard design for a public sector school with 30 classrooms. I'd like to confirm that for the island school to be redeveloped, which is located at Port Road, this is also my constituency. I hope that we're not going to redevelop it into a luxury, international school, although the school will fund part of the cost. And I also have to argue that the subsidy that they are applying for is reasonable. In 2009, there is another 30 classroom secondary school in Aberdeen, and they spent $290 million to rebuild, including site formation. In 2010, St. Francis Gnostion, 24 classroom, $310 million. May 2015, Yinghua College, 30 classroom, $432 million. In 2016, in Kai Tak, there were a secondary school, the Cognition College, 30 classroom, $440 million. But this time, for this school, the cost is $536 million. So my question is that over the last few years, regarding the standard design public sector school, has there been any change to the design? If so, could you give us a paper and providing us with a comparison? Also, I'd like to ask about the footnote 2 of the paper, which is that the no unusual environment or geotechnical constraints on site. So what do you mean by no unusual environmental and geotechnical constraint? What does it mean? As you all learned about the MTRC asking for supplement provision, they always blame it on the underground, soil being harder than anticipated, and so on. This is what I want to know. Thank you, Under Secretary, for this project. We're basing our calculation on the 2017 price level, which is comparable to the construction cost of a standard public sector school. The cost projection is $435 million for a standard public, sector secondary school. It's $308 million. Why is it there is an excess of more than $100 million? This is because for this item, we need to first of all demolish the original school premises. We need to then, we need to have site formation on site, and furthermore, this school has more classroom. A typical school with a 30 classroom, but this one has 42 classrooms, accommodating close to 12,000 students.
In addition, because of other environmental factors, we are still now earmarking funding based on the student population. You asked whether there would be any irregularities on the land. Well, that already mentioned by member is already the irregularity found. Well, if I remember correctly, then the school should be responsible for taking down the school. I'm not sure whether members would also follow on questions, but my understanding is that no, the consultancy fee is paid by the school, but then we would be responsible for tearing down of the school. Well, I'd like to remind members that because this relates to funding. So if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please raise this before voting. Well, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, I want to declare that I have no pecuniary interest. I'm just one of the directors of ESF. Well, no pecuniary interest, right? Yes, no money. Madam Chair, I want to try to explain why the government has to pay for this project. It has been explained in the paper that the government recurrent subvention has been cancelled for 2 years. The agreement reached between EDB and ESF in the arrangements of ESF Island School has been made, but this is not a 30 classroom school. It is a 42 classroom school, and so the figure is appropriate and accurate. For Yinghua School, there was an issue with the land, and so there was there was more money given up. Island School is in mid-island. It's on mid-level, so we're not sure about the land formation. But the student population is mainly expatriate families. Island School is not just a school in which you pay a few million debenture and you'll be able to get in. There are 12,000 students in Island School, and they cannot be enrolled in local schools or be absorbed in local schools. And this school uses English as a medium of instruction, and it also runs the IB program. There has been concrete spalling from the ceilings and exterior walls due to aging of the school premises. So there is a danger to the school building right now. I hope that members will all support the funding of this redevelopment. All right, this is just a recommendation. We still have 3 members waiting to speak: Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Chen Ji-chun, Mr. Ip Kin Yun. I've already drawn a line. We're not going to take any more questions for this item. Sorry, Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding redevelopment of Island School, I would like to ask the government about the policy. This is not a public funded school. It is a private school. I don't think the public is clear about the finances of ESF. Mr. Sheikh said school fees are not too high, but we don't really have the figures. Can they be self-financed? Why does the government need to pay for the redevelopment project? So I would like to ask the government the responsibilities of the private schools in redevelopment. Do you want to ask about ESF, or do you want to talk specifically about Island School? Oh, this is Island School, right? Well, on this project, the government is funding for the redevelopment because, as Mr. Abraham Sheikh explained, this was an agreement reached between EDB and ESF in 2013. And then from 2017, there would be a phasing out arrangement of the government recurrent subvention for ESF. So it was gradually phased out in 2016 to 2017. But then in agreement reached at that time included the redevelopment of the project. So this was still included in the government subvention because this arrangement was made in 2013. ESF school fees also need to be approved by the government. There is a vetting procedure, and we would also consider whether the school fee adjustment will really be conducive to students' learning, whether it is affordable by parents, whether it has been consulted with the parents and stakeholders. We would also consider previous school fees and see whether they have really committed to the work they have promised previously. I thought this arrangement was made in 2013. Oh, yes. It was reported to LegCo at that time that there would be phasing out arrangement of the subvention. Is this a profit organization or a non-profit organization? This is non-profit organization. All those schools that receive government subvention are non-profit schools. Mr. Chan Ji-chun. Madam Chair, Mr. Sheikh, well, Dr. Elena Wong asked a very good question. I just want to clarify your understanding. The Director of Audit will also review and monitor the school's operations. Thank you. Mr. Chan Ji-chun, well, although Mr. Sheikh said that school fees are reasonable and not too exorbitant, we're talking about over hundreds of thousands per year. Mr. Sheikh can really help us in our understanding. I think you should sit over that side next time because I think you're more clear about the project development. All right, I would like to first refer to paragraph 9 that when the school decants, then it would temporarily be accommodated at the 2 vacant school premises in Sha Tin, and that the school will bear the renovation and other related costs for the decanting premises. Well, is that a regular procedure that ESF will bear the renovation and other costs? And what are you talking about related costs? Do you still need to pay rent for the premises? The government is paying 536 million, and then ESF will need to pay 681 million. So ESF will be able to make it more glamorous using that money. And who would the premises belong to? Is that the ceiling that the government will subvent for this redevelopment? I'll see whether my colleague or Mr. Sheikh has any supplementary information to give out. But let me first say that the government will only pay 536 million, and that's the ceiling that we are subventing for this project. For the land rights, oh no, sorry, on the renovation of the 2 school premises for public schools, then EDB will be responsible for the safety and renovation of the schools. But as ESF is a private school, then it will bear the renovation costs. For land rights, may I defer to my colleague? Thank you, Madam Chair. ESF is under a private treaty grant. We have already provided a huge lump sum subvention. We have signed a service agreement with them, regulating how they use our resources and in their operations. If there is any violation, then we can request ESF to return all the government subventions. Thank you. Madam Chair, there's also a question that they haven't answered. So ESF will be responsible, or ESF can decide on how much money they are paying out for the renovation. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me supplement. The government subvention will only be based on the renovation cost for a public school, and we would calculate how much money would be needed based on a public school. The school, which is ESF, can decide how much money they want to spend on their facilities. Well, we cannot say that they would make it more luxurious and glamorous. But how about future maintenance costs? Oh, that would be the responsibility of ESF. Thank you. Mr. Ip Kian Yun. Madam Chair, I think it is necessary to redevelop Island School, because in paragraph 6, a paper mentioned that there has been concrete spalling from the ceilings and exterior walls from time to time, and that is very dangerous to the students. The ESF has the right to spend more money to enhance the school facilities. We could also consider adopting the same approach for public schools, that they could spend extra money if they like on facilities. So I think we should also consider whether we could use this approach to improve public schools. We are discussing an item on redevelopment today. I want to try to understand what you mean by redevelopment of a school. Recently, there have been applications made by other schools to redevelop in situ. For example, in Kowloon Tong, a secondary school has made such a request, and the school also has seen concrete spalling, pipe leakage. The classrooms are not adequate for small class learning, and even though the premises are big enough, there is no indoor assembly hall, and so they would have to stand outside even during days of rain. And there's also some sort of chemical leakage in some of the older walls.
The government recently rejected this application. Why is it that you are not able to help this school? So what exactly is your policy regarding school redevelopment? Can you help these schools to redevelop as soon as possible? Under Secretary, all along, through redevelopment and reprovisioning and expansion, we have been improving the condition of existing schools. When we vet any application for redevelopment, as members had pointed out, after they submitted their indication, or the Bureau will assess the application according to a set of criteria to determine whether or not the application should be supported. And conditions vary among the schools, but we would consider several factors. First of all, the quality of teaching, whether the school can operate in a sustainable manner, whether there are suitable premises to decant, and also whether the size of the school premises is suitable for redevelopment. Also, whether the school itself has consulted all its stakeholders who accept the redevelopment plan, and whether or not they can carry on with the daily operations. All along, improving substandard school premises has always been the work that we've been pursuing actively. Madam Chair, I think the situation I described just now fully meet the Bureau's requirements. I'd like to urge the Bureau to actively consider the application by this school and give us a reply as to whether you can help these schools as soon as possible. I think we can wrap up our discussion on this item. And the Bureau will be submitting this item to the PWSC and FC. Are there any objections? If not, then the panel would support the referral of this paper to the PWSC and the FC. I'd like to thank the Undersecretary and the PAS for attending our discussion. The next item is implementation of free quality kindergarten education. We will now invite the officials to join us for this item. I'd like to welcome Secretary for Education, Mr. Young, and Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Young, and PAS, Mrs. Chen. Secretary, could you walk us through the paper? The new free quality kindergarten education policy has been implemented beginning from this academic year, offering free quality kindergarten education and also accessibility of students to different modes of service that suit their needs. So we will enable parents the choice. The policy has been supported by the kindergartens and members of the community. 90% of the kindergartens attending this scheme are able to offer free half-day kindergarten half-day courses, and 70% of the whole-day kindergartens are charging fees less than $1,000. We have attempted to improve quality of kindergarten education. In 2017-2018, for example, we've announced the new kindergarten curriculum, and we've actually carried out a series of professional training for teachers, briefing for parents, and enhancing support for schools. In taking care of the diverse needs of students, for example, students with special educational needs or those with development issues, we also have a on-site pre-primary rehab services to provide support, and we're going to regularize the scheme. The kindergartens can make use of the 1:11 teacher-student ratio and we've also stepped up enhanced the training for teachers. For supporting non-Chinese speaking teachers, we've also come up with tailor-made courses and provide more teacher support. And kindergartens can apply for such professional support. For kindergartens, enrolling more than 8 or more non-Chinese speaking students, they will get additional funding. More than 90% of these kindergartens would have received such funding. They have already, or more than 90% of it, arranged for teachers to take care of such needs. They will use the resources to offer for translation services and cultural activities. They also actively participate in professional training offered by tertiary institutions and so on. On quality assurance, we've already completed the enhancement of our performance indicators, and in 2017 we announced the new performance indicators. Starting from 2017-2018, schools would need to follow the new guidelines when they do their school-based assessment. Beginning from next year, the Bureau will conduct quality review according to the new PIs. In order to enhance transparency and accountability, from 2018-19 onward, we will steadily increase we will upload upload the findings of the quality review onto our website. We will continue to develop on the existing basis regarding the salaries for teachers. We'll explore setting up a salary scale for kindergarten teachers. On enhancing professional training for teachers, principals and teachers should, within every 3-year cycle, take part in 60 hours of CPD. We also have training for teachers with development issues. So all scheme kindergarten should at least have one teacher who have received such training. At the same time, for every kindergarten recruiting, enrolling non-Chinese speaking students, at least one teacher should have received relevant training. In 2018-2019 onwards, we will provide for also a subsidy for supply teachers so the teachers can take time to attend CPD. On enhancing transparency and accountability, we will also require the managers of the board to include different stakeholders, including independent lay members. We look forward to work together with the stakeholders to work together to enhance the quality of kindergarten education. Thank you very much. We have 8 members who would like to speak, so I will not be able to allow a second round. For the first round, we have Tanya Chen, Ho Kai Ming, Ho Jung Tai, Chung Kwan, Ma Fong Kwok, and so have I left for anyone? Tanya Chen. Thank you. I think the Secretary would expect that we would be asking this question. That is, firstly, do you have any plan to extend free quality kindergarten education to whole day kindergartens? Although there is an improvement, more students are now able to attend whole day and long whole day kindergartens, and the fees they need to pay are less than $1,000. In paragraph 16, you say that beginning 2018-2019, teacher salaries will be adjusted according to the adjustment to civil servants. And also, you will explore the possibility of coming up with a salary scale. So what are the steps that you're talking about? Talking about feasibility, that already takes 3 years. Will you also decide whether to go ahead with this during those 3 years, or will you need to conduct further studies? Because very often after you finish one study, you will need to make another study. So what exactly will be the steps that you'll take? What are the procedures? Thank you. For whole day and long whole day sessions, under the new policy, our review and implementation, I think we've already had a very thorough discussion. There is a demand within the community that we should extend free kindergarten education to whole day and long whole day kindergartens. But from the educational angle, we don't think that a whole day or long whole day session are necessary. It may be necessary for some families, but from the learning perspective, it may not really be essential. So we therefore don't have any plan to extend the scheme to whole day and long whole day kindergartens. Of course, at different times when we conduct our reviews, we will further consider the needs of our community. Regarding salary scale, we are now beginning to talk to the sector. If we're going to come up with a new salary scale, we need to also discuss how we should allocate the school places, how many teachers should there be in each kindergarten. So we need to address these operational issues first. We'll take the opportunity of these next 3 years while we implement a new scheme. We will collect data. For example, we will collect information about the latest information regarding salaries. Under the new policy, we hope that within 3 years there will be a review, at which time we'll also make a decision as to whether or not a salary scale is feasible. In making a decision, we'll be looking at the implementation timetable, but we hope we'll be able to come up with a decision in 3 years. Homework and free kindergarten education. The most important issue is the policy basis, right? With such a basis, and you can explore whether you should learn from other jurisdictions and if you say that from the educational angle, whole day or long whole days session not really essential, then it will be difficult for you to really, implement that. But I don't think we can change that for the time being. Mr. Kai-Ming, the education, the secretary said that there is no justification for that whole day or long whole day session are essential. But for working parents, especially housewives, it's very difficult for them because they cannot. Because if the children cannot attend whole day school, they will not be able to take up employment. The C said that we should release the potential of such labor force, but if we have whole day kindergarten and long whole day garden, then the mothers can go and work full time. If the Bureau does not begin to help so that the women can can be spared the time. We already have insufficient labor. If the Bureau doesn't help to relieve the potential labor force from women, then I don't think you'll be able to help. So, Mr. Secretary, could you consider providing more, whole day and long whole day kindergarten places? Secondly, free kindergarten education. At the end of August and early September, we conducted a study in the more grassroots districts, and we conducted a survey among the parents of children attending kindergartens, and we found out that only 30% of the parents really don't have to pay for any fees for the children. At the beginning of the term, they have to pay, about 25% of them have to pay more than $1,000 miscellaneous fees. So can you further enhance your policy? And I think there should be more regulation regarding miscellaneous fees. In the new housing estates, can you build more premises for kindergartens to operate? During some period of time, no such premises have been offered to kindergartens. I think the biggest cost to operate a kindergarten will be the rents they have to pay. So could you consider whether or not the Bureau can provide such support for parents? Talking about whole day and long whole day kindergartens, I was saying that from the educational angle, it may not be really necessary that we have whole day and long whole day kindergarten sessions. For a society to allow women to take up employment, of course, a whole day session help. I've always said that for long day, whole day, and whole day session, you need to look at it from two angles. Number one, supply. Is there such a supply before the parents can have the assurance to place the kids in kindergartens and take up employment? The next question is, does it have to be free? It's not necessarily the case. If they take up a well-paid job, they certainly can also be able to afford the fees.
So with whole day and long whole day, yes, we could put in more government suspension, but it shouldn't be free. As for the other questions, if there is enough, I could try to answer them later on. Well, yes, we are working on the quantity. We have been trying to increase it. Next, we have Mr. Cheng Chung Tai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Last year, we launched the free quality kindergarten education. The EDB said that they would try to enhance the quality of KG education. According to CB bracket 4427/1718 bracket 02 in paragraph 21, which is on page 6, it is stated that there are some quality indicators that have already been finalized and released in mid-December 2017, and that have found online the kindergarten quality indicators online. I have a few questions. I can only find this information online. We don't have this in hard copy, but that's okay because it is already public information. I want to ask whether these indicators, would they include all the kindergartens, including private kindergartens, those who did not join the free kindergartens, and would in the final review of PIs, would it be publicized? Because if it is not made public, then how would parents and stakeholders better understand the performance of the kindergartens? And if this is not made public, then why are you not giving out this information? We don't have a paper on that right now. Thirdly, Madam Chair, I hope that in 2018, in the first half of this year, we'll be able to arrange for the quality assurance, a special meeting to discuss this item, because this is quite an important matter. I will give you a simple example. In the paper, well, for the paper, there are 80 pages in total, and we're not going to have time to discuss this. There was a page that I found it odd. In it, a mention was made on the performance indicator was how to look into a 3-year-old for aesthetics and culture, whether they understand that Hong Kong is part of China, and whether the students will be able to differentiate the difference between the flag of China and the flag of others, and to know that they are Chinese, and that handover was 1997. Now, this was a performance indicator for a 3-year-old kindergarten student, and this refined TPI was finalized and released in mid-December, and which means that it would be implemented in 2018, which is this year. And so students would be also assessed based on their understanding of Chinese culture. So I think that we do have the responsibility and the need to hold a special meeting on the performance indicators. Oh, these are the 3 questions. Well, thank you. Well, for the matter you just raised, maybe we can talk. You can talk to the Secretariat about that next. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, the first 2 questions are very simple. Well, we don't have time. Well, he just needs to answer whether this paper would be made public. Well, very simply put, on the 3 questions, I could still be very brief. First one, on the indicators, yes, all Hong Kong kindergartens would need to follow these indicators, including ESN kindergarten. Am I right? Yes, or including other kindergartens. And every 6 years, for those joining this scheme, we would review the kindergartens. We would review them based on their quality, and we would make public the information. And in my opening speech, I've also said that we are also working on this right now. In the future, we would first make public the English version, because many non-Chinese people and EMs would like to know about this information, and so we would release such information. Of course, we are willing to meet with LegCo members on the report on PIs. Those are examples given in the report. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to know them. But it is not a problem to promote studies on nationalism. We have to teach them to identify themselves as Chinese, and to be able to identify the Chinese flag and the flag of Hong Kong. Well, you're talking about 3-year-old. Anyways, an answer has been given. If you think there is a need, you can reach out to the Secretariat for further information. Mr. He Jifeng, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear the explanation given by the Secretary on why support could not be given to long day and for whole day and long whole day schooling. Well, I'm shocked with your answer. You're saying that for those students who are going to WD and LWD kindergartens, the parents will be able to afford schooling. Well, if you say that they would be able to pay for the service, that means that you are going against the 15-year free schooling policy because we're talking about free kindergarten education. And regardless of wealth, this service should be provided for free. But what you're telling me is that, oh, they're making a few $1,000s more so they can afford the whole day and long whole day program. Well, this is what we mean. The government will provide a basic free quality kindergarten education. So we use half day as a starting point. Any student in Hong Kong under our scheme could participate in free kindergarten education. In principle, they wouldn't need to pay. But Mr. Hui, I want to make clear that we provide free quality education. We're talking about half day. I'm asking whether if parents can afford the money, then this wouldn't be provided. No, I'm talking about whole day and long whole day, which is already higher than the basic quality kindergarten education. Madam Chair, she's not answering my question. Secretary, can you answer my question directly? Well, can you allow the Secretary to speak? I'm asking whether you mean that if parents can make money, then they have the responsibility to pay for the service. Well, you should give me time to answer my question. You're not answering my question. Well, yes, Secretary, please answer his question. I'm just trying to explain to him that whole day and long whole day are not basic services. Therefore, when parents choose to enroll in whole day and long whole day programs, then the government would consider whether these services should be fully subsidized. Our stance right from the beginning is that it should be the responsibility of both the government and parents, and therefore parents should pay for part of it. Well, I think this is because your point is that since you have released working power by sending children to WD and LWD, they could pay the services. Well, Madam Chair, I have to emphasize that I'm trying to explain it and he's not making understanding. I don't want to argue with you. Yes, I don't want to argue with you either. Next we have Mr. Lee King Yun. Madam Chair, basically there are two questions that we want to emphasize. One is staff salary, and the other is the whole day and long whole day subsidy. Well, I don't want to go too much into detail, but in the paper there has been some new developments made, which I would like to specifically mention. I still hope that the administration will try to address the questions I raised. But going to the new developments, that after government subsidy, there should be an enhancement in kindergarten quality, including the staff and principal professional development. And I'm just a bit worried here in some of the developments here. First of all, on continuous education, a soft target in CPD hours, that there should be 60 hours of CPD activities in a 3-year cycle, which means that there should be 20 hours per year. It doesn't seem too problematic if you look at it per year. And in the note, it was mentioned that Singapore also adopts similar approaches. And in mainland China, it is compulsory for KG teachers to take up 360 hours of CPD activities in 5 years. Therefore, 360 hours compared to ours 60 years seem not too long. But you have to understand that CPD activities done in mainland China are done during school hours. And so it is a burden for teachers in Hong Kong to have to go for CPD activities after school. Kindergarten teachers work a very long time. So if you add in a soft target, you might think that it is not easily achievable, but actually it is not. In paragraph 26, you mentioned that there would be an element of supply teacher included, and I think, yes, you need to support the kindergartens, but then I'm very worried with school governance. It seems that this time you're requesting kindergarten to also adopt the approaches made by primary and secondary schools. Because as I've mentioned earlier, kindergarten teachers work a very long period of time and don't really have too many after hours. Primary schools and secondary schools would have 60 to 70 teachers, but then kindergarten teachers were only talking about 10 or more. To support a governance structure might be additional burden on the school, although you said that there should be 3 directors only, but then the directors would need to attend meetings, and who's going to write up the minutes for the meetings, etc. So you would also need to set up an incorporated management committee would not actually work, nor would a school management committee. I want to ask whether there has been a discussion with the stakeholders. It seemed that many of them, after hearing this, have raised concerns. I hope that this consultation could be looked at in detail and to really target kindergartens. Secretary, we really don't have enough time. Maybe you can address these problems later on. Well, the meeting should last till 12:45. Today, I'd like to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Well, we still have Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Zhang Guoguan, Mr. Xiu Ka-chen, Mr. Ari Lee, Dr. Fernando Cheung. I hope that you would be strict on time, 3 minutes, and I'm going to cut the time immediately when 3 minutes is up. I'm Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we welcome the government implementing the quality education, and we are more concerned with that this free education is not exactly free education, because we see that the government has allowed those who participate in the scheme to take school fees, which is not taking in not exceeding 9,000 for half day, and so the plan has already begun. Has the government considered or looked at the school fees charged by the kindergarten, whether it has already reached the cap? Secretary, I think in the paper we have already mentioned that those who have joined our half-day scheme, over 90% of them are able to provide the service free of charge, and for whole day 70% of them charge $1,000 or less. So this is the general situation, but as to the exact number of school fee charging kindergarten, so you're talking about 10% of them charge school fees, but what is the range of school fees, do you know?
Oh, I don't think I have the numbers with me offhand, but there is a range. And they don't really, go up to the maximum. It's actually below the ceiling. It's slightly less, close to 9,000. Other than tuition fees, 10% of these kindergartens charge a fee. There are also charges for educational materials. Have these already been included as part of the school fees or what? Well, among kindergartens all along they have this practice of charging miscellaneous fees. The same for primary and secondary schools. There are charges for snacks and uniforms and so on. There are also textbook fees, fees for exercise books, and other miscellaneous fees. Our rules regarding miscellaneous fees are the same as before. That is, for textbooks, the schools are not able to make a profit. But for other miscellaneous items, they are able to make a slight profit such profit, however, must be plowed back in for educational purposes or teaching purposes. So have you set a cap on how much they can charge for such miscellaneous fees? Well, in the past, kindergartens have all operated privately, and they made all the rules. But the scheme that we're now implementing is such that we would require kindergartens to list the miscellaneous fees that they would charge, so that the parents will have a choice. So there's no cap. We have not set caps for some of the items. Perhaps the Secretary can consider this. That is, for certain schools, they can set some, mandatory miscellaneous items. The rest could be optional. Well, Madam Chair, we've also considered this suggestion. But even for uniforms, some kindergartens don't require children to wear uniforms. So it's difficult to set a rigid rule. But you can have a cap. Well, right now, in the profiles of kindergartens, we've already listed the fees that these kindergartens charge, so the parents would know in choosing a particular kind of kindergarten how much will be charged. In order to enable us to monitor these kindergartens, could we ask the government to give us such number so that we know how much fees are charged by those 10% of the kindergartens, and also the situation regarding miscellaneous fees? Madam Chair, of course, for school fees, I can certainly give you the details regarding the minimum, the maximum fees which are being charged, and roughly the range and number of schools which charge such fees. For miscellaneous fees, we tried our best, but for major items like school uniforms or meals, we can give you the highest and lowest numbers. Right. We just want to aggregate for these miscellaneous items. I think you can take that up with the Secretary. Mr. Chung Kok Kwan. Thank you. I have a question regarding salary scale for kindergarten teachers. I'm very happy to learn that the government now would like to implement such a scale. The document says that the Bureau will start from 2017-2018, and you collect data for a 3-year period and use that as the basis to determine whether you want to set such a scale. Kindergarten teachers have been fighting for this for a long time, because this is really helpful in maintaining a stable, teaching force. You use the data for 3 years for your assessment, which means we still have to wait. At the same time, I'd like to know whether you have a timetable. After you have the data for the 3 years, when is the soonest that you can do this? For how long would the teachers have to wait before they can see the implementation of a salary scale? Because this is very important for kindergarten education. Secretary, salary scale for kindergarten teachers have been the subject of discussion for several years. We've said on different occasions that whether we're talking about salary scale or we are now allowing for a flexible range at the moment, there are pros and cons in these, different approaches. Many teachers are saying that if we adopt a model of salary scale, they can have more confidence and they have a more stable, employment opportunity. So we've heard that. We have a lot of discussion on this. So going forward, we will take 2 or 3 years to collect data, so that after we've implemented the new system, what is the impact on kindergarten teacher salaries and how it affects the kindergartens. Also, we are talking to the profession, especially the management of kindergartens. We always say that once we provide a salary scale, then we need to know how many teachers and how many students are in the kindergarten, each kindergartens, and we have a duty to ensure the resources are used in the most optimal manner. And then we have to consider we need to allocate students to kindergartens. Let's say, should I allocate the maximum number of places in a kindergarten before I allocate students to other kindergartens? So we need to take this opportunity while we're collecting data to talk to the management of kindergartens and the stakeholder to see whether the details are can really be implemented. Allocation of school places, kindergarten places is already something we need to look at. But still, our objective is that when we conduct a 3-year review, we would, at the end of which we will decide whether or not we will come up with a salary scale, and if we decide to do it, how long would it take for it to be implemented? I think we will have a clear idea by then.
We still have 4 members who are waiting to speak, and maybe we would have to go over. I would have to go over 1 o'clock. We would allow the 4 members, all 4, to speak. And I think we would need to extend the meeting over 1, but we do not have any motions to vote for today. Next, we have Mr. Shiu Ka-chun. Thank you. Well, I just heard that Secretary talking about the salary grade. I invite you to share this with your boss, the CE, because the Chief Executive on February 14th on 2017 said in a press conference that these $5 billion can really help to reduce student pressure, to relieve teacher pressure, and then to adopt measures to try to enhance all these. It will be some measures adopted should be to provide free quality kindergarten education and to set a salary grade for the teachers. Well, that was what the CE said last year. I don't think the CE just made empty talk, but then it seemed that it's just talk. So we are all asking about the salary grade, on how we can really implement it and whether you would really take this forward. The second question is, I'm not sure whether you have heard something called that the most expensive, that what is free is actually most expensive. I think this was what Ma once said, that according to the guideline on kindergarten come nursery, it seems that $7,000 would be paid to miscellaneous expenses. I think Mr. Ho Kai-ming also asked about miscellaneous expenses. Aside from the expenses, it also stated out that last year for miscellaneous expenses on exercise books, uniform, school bags, tea, etc., in kindergarten interim would charge $7,230. The school bag cost $80. The other 4 items were over $1,000 each. $2,420 for tea, $2,500 for exercise books. Well, yes, you said that it's free education, but then the miscellaneous items are actually horrendous. So we want to ask how you can regulate miscellaneous expenses. Oh yes, we have members concerned with the tuition fees. I'm more concerned with miscellaneous fees. Right now, do you think that this is reasonable? Are they really earning a little just to cover their operations? Secretary, for the first question, we're going, of course, to report to the Chief Executive on the salary grade, and of course, we would need to seek her agreement before we go forward. We are actually very proactively considering the way forward in implementation. Regarding the second question, I think I addressed Dr. Helena Wong and Mr. Ho Kim-mung earlier. Even though when we say free education for secondary school, there you still need to pay for miscellaneous items such as school uniforms and textbooks. So this is not included in the free education. Well, yes, I understand that the government must monitor whether these fees are too exorbitant. Secretary, so how would you monitor that? Would you set a guideline? I think you really need to think about it, because you're talking about you're talking about some local schools and many grassroots families, and they may not be able to afford all these charges. Next, Ms. Larry Lee. Thank you. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to see the implementation of free quality kindergarten education, and then we are taking this forward step by step. Although it's not 100% free, I'm happy to hear from the Secretary that 90% of the kindergartens are offering a free kindergarten education for half a day. I hope that we will continue to work towards this path. I'm also happy to hear that some of our requests discussed in the panel on education have been added in, such as providing more Chinese for EM students and for helping students with special needs. Although the government said that we might have to wait 3 more years for extra funding, I'm sure that the staff salary would increase with more resources put on it, and teachers all hope to have a salary framework. But there's one point that I need to criticize. I remember that we are very concerned with the long whole day and the whole day places. I don't see any information on places for whole day and long whole day program to see whether there would be any increase in numbers. Can you tell me about whether there's been any increase in number? Many grassroots families always tell me that they can't find vacancies and spots in schools for whole day and long whole day programs. I remember, Secretary, that you tried to follow up with this item. But I remember you said that there needs to be a planning. Len, can you also tell me this? Can you try to address this? Well, yes. We are trying to change it from 730-250 to 500-500 ratio, because the planning department is still circulating some of the latest information papers. I hope that in due course we will be able to set out this as our guidelines, and once this is released, then for any major structure and in new public housing estates, there would be more whole day spaces available. For example, for a school premise that is to be built in the future, there will be more whole day places, because once we have these planning guidelines in place, then we will be able to take this forward, but it takes time. As to the exact number on whole day places in 2017-18 compared to 2016-17, we don't have this number now. I'm also concerned with small schools. We're afraid that with resources, then the larger schools would crowd out the smaller schools. Do you have such figures? We just started the implementation of free education in 2017-18. Some schools have told us that there is some difficulties in adjustments, both large schools and small schools. We are going to wait a couple of years after operations have become smooth before we would really look into whether there would be such problems. Well, I hope that you would really look into the figures. Next, Dr. Fernando Chang.
Fernando Chang. Madam Chair, I understand that free kindergarten education, it's free for only 3 hours. Half-day kindergartens are free. After 3 hours, there would be some subsidy, but parents still need to pay. I think this is the coordination between the Welfare and Education Bureau. There's still some barriers. We thoroughly talk about whole day and long whole day kindergartens. For nurseries, typically for children over the age of 2, they would already admit the students. For the welfare sector, we have nursery services for those children between the age of 0 to 2. and there are only about 1,000 odd places. For those age 2 and above, you have nurseries. Normally, they will cater to the needs of working parents and single-parent families, offering longer, childcare services plus kindergarten curriculum. Unfortunately, now that you have this free quality kindergarten scheme, the nurseries will continue to admit children. But for some kindergartens, those between age of 2 to 3, they don't come under the system of free education. From 3 to 6, they will be covered. But for these operators, they are taking extra time to operate. They are, operate under a lot of difficulties, and if they don't have enough support, the teachers have a heavier workload, but they don't get a better, pay. So therefore, it's difficult for them to retain the teachers. The problem is still not yet resolved. So we're talking basically charitable organizations which are willing to serve, families where both parents are working. And so today, we don't have time, but what I want to do is that regarding children with SEN, the places have increased to 7,000. I want you to give us a timetable, how you plan to do it in stages, and how many additional places will be offered each year. For ethnic minorities, Eunice asked me to ask this question. You say most kindergartens receiving these subsidies will spend them on hiring teacher assistants and providing translation services. In the profile for kindergartens, can you clearly stipulate how the kindergartens will use such subsidies for parents' reference? And how also do you review the effectiveness of such additional allowances or subsidies? You also said that kindergarten teachers, at least one should have received the basic course for, catering to ethnic minorities. And in the training for kindergarten teachers, would you add the element of cultural, understanding, so that all kindergarten teachers would have a training, multicultural training? Chairman, I'll briefly respond to members' questions. On non-Chinese speaking students, we can certainly provide more details as to how they spend the subsidies allocated to them. I will encourage them to provide more such details in their profile. The 30-hour basic training, I think we collaborate with Hong Kong U on that. Regarding the content of the courses, I'll try to see whether I can provide members with more information. And this is a project we work together with the university. Hopefully we can offer a 30-hour, training for kindergarten teachers so that they can help non-Chinese speaking teachers, students. Well, you asked a series of questions. I don't think I've answered all those questions, but yeah, perhaps I can provide written answers after the meeting. Why don't we allow the next member to speak first? Would you? Thank you. I have several questions for non-Chinese speaking students. You now have an arrangement for them. There are two scenarios. Despite this arrangement, how you can ensure that the non-Chinese speaking students can be spread out among more kindergartens instead of being, focused on just a few kindergartens. And when they go up to primary schools, I've seen that many of these non-Chinese speaking students tend to, to go to only a very selected few number of primary schools. So could you give us some information on that? Next, SEN. I see you have some projects. After the screening, you now providing support for the kindergarten students so that they can move up to primary school so that they can cope with their studies. So will there be some screening courses? These children may have different needs, and through the support offered by the Bureau, can we divide them among different levels so that we can offer different assistance respectively. Thirdly, the management committee. Of course, there would need to be at least 3 managers on the school management committee. But the SMC, is it just a formality, or is it that they should only focus on taking care of the financial arrangements of the kindergartens, and they would not be involved in the daily teaching? So I'd like to know more about the role of the SMC. I'll be brief, Madam Chair. You can also, for the school management committee, other than the school sponsoring bodies who are the managers, we also like to have parents, teachers, and others to help monitor the management of the kindergartens, because this will ensure transparency and accountability and better cater to the needs of the students. What is most important is that we are adding a parent, a teacher, or an alumni or lay member to the committee. That's the major change. For SEN, the pilot scheme is now mainly carried out by the SWD. They would approach NGOs with professional teams which will provide service in the schools. And because these teams would know which are the kindergartens which have the need. After knowing what are their needs, they will provide, service in situ. For non-Chinese speaking students, I'll ask Mrs. Wong to elaborate. Deputy Secretary, regarding non-Chinese speaking students and the university course which is offered, the course will basically cater to the needs of teachers. That is, it will teach them to respect different cultures of the students, and also how they can help non-Chinese speaking students to learn Chinese. As to whether the NCS students will be concentrated in only a few number of schools. Well, it is a policy, and when we deploy resources, that we would encourage kindergartens not to, recruit mainly NCS students. We will provide special support if the kindergartens have enrolled 8 NCS students. According to observation, the NCS students are spread out quite extensively among 40 schools, and the students are not just concentrated only in a few schools. They can attend kindergartens in different districts and different kindergartens. Thank you. Basically, members have finished with all the questions. Our next item is ALP. If there's no ALP, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.